right, can you hear me? Make sure everything's together. Glad to be back for another week. As you see, we starting our show off this week with someone's birthday. Woohoo! It is my birthday tomorrow, and I'm so excited about that. Thank you, 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 thank you. So yeah, we're gonna be. My bow tie look crooked. I don't know. That's why I'm a little late. I was in there trying to fix it, but most of the time this might be in the way anyway, so forgive me. Yeah, so tomorrow's my birthday. I'll be turning the ripe young age of 22 years old. What? Why you put my business all in the street? I just said I was turning 22 and you talking about happy early 45. Yeah, it's interesting. So yeah, so since somebody put my business in out there in the street, it is my 45th birthday. 45 revolutions around the sun. Right. I couldn't even get my little joke off. Now you're gonna laugh. You out here put my business. You know, I don't put everything on Facebook, but that's when I look a little shiny. I'm trying a new light. It got me glistening. Nah, I gotta turn this down. I don't know. It's just too much going on. But again, glad to be here. Happy to be able to celebrate. Oh shoot. Hold on one second. I think I forgot one important thing. Okay, hold on. Yeah, I told y'all we've been trying to add in Instagram, but I always be forgetting because I gotta Instagram make you get a little stream code every single time. And yeah, you know what? It's that new little light that I've got, that little travel light that goes in the box. I was using something else. But that light is actually amazing. So I'm thoroughly impressed. I'll probably give them a good review because I am that dude. I'm gonna leave reviews and reviews. Give me some perspective for sure. So, but anyway, like I was saying, tomorrow's my birthday. I'm so excited, so excited. So today, well, I guess leading up to the 45th, I didn't expect it to be something so introspective, but it definitely has caused me to be that. So we're gonna talk about a couple of things today. Few moments of clarity. I don't think I'm gonna keep you all night because I'm ready to start celebrating. Yeah, so trying to keep my life. Today was a busy day. Had to do a couple of trainings and meetings and prepare for a training and all this other stuff. And then I'm gonna get ready to go out of town. So it's just been a busy week. You sure? You said the lighting looks better. I mean, I'm gonna keep asking you like I'm just talking to you, but I don't know. I'm next stop, new camera. But I just feel like this one maybe is how it looks to me. But anyway, so one of the things that wound up happening to me this week was I would like to call it some sort of moment of clarity, as we've been talking about, emotions and feelings and layered emotions and trying to get the root of these emotions and feelings over the past few weeks. I think that this week I had a little moment of clarity with it being, I guess maybe with it being Valentine's Day and then my birthday, a week after Valentine's Day. As I mentioned last week, it was going to be Valentine's Day, and I told you how that was triggering. But, if you've been on, you've heard me talk about where I've been dealing with these emotions of anger and frustration and all of those things. So I feel like I've gotten a little clarity about that, and I think my clarity will be something that some of you, or maybe even a lot of you, can relate to. So the first thing I really wanted to do the first thing I needed to do was look at the language that I was using to describe my feelings, whatever I was feeling inside. You know what I mean? So I noticed that I used a lot of anger and frustration, and it was one that kept coming up a lot, although I've never really mentioned it on the lives or to you all, is this feeling of feeling cheated. And I had to really think about, are those really the feelings that I'm feeling? You know what I mean? Because at this point they're layered. I don't know what they are. I'm trying to pull back the layers and figure them out for myself. But for the most part, what I realized is really all of those and more, right? So then I had to, after I looked at the language that I was using to describe what I was feeling, then I had to, like I said, think about, are those my actual feelings? And for real, they were my actual feelings. And then I had to have a real conversation with myself about what are some of the roots of these feelings, especially with like I said last week, especially with this being, for a lack of better words, a 1 year anniversary of the beginning of a new chapter in my life, right? So I had to review my ideas on relationships. So with y'all, I'm about to have a real moment of vulnerability, which we do have sometimes. So in my life, it's a funny thing because most people would assume I've been married, or I should have been married, or somebody's crazy for not marrying me or something. So if I don't tell you, you really won't know that I've actually asked a couple of women to ask to marry me. And I've dated women that I thought we played around with the idea, but I never really took serious. So in my life, when I review those relationships, there are two that really stand out to me. And it was the first one that I wanted to marry. And the thing about that is, I had to be honest with myself on why I wanted to marry her, and be honest with myself on why that wasn't a good idea. So when I thought about her, the main reason I wanted to marry this woman was because I loved her. And at this point in my life, I'm thinking that love is enough, right? Now I do understand that love is the main ingredient, but it takes many, 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 many other ingredients. Love is like, I like to bake. So love is like the flour, but you still need eggs, butter, sugar, salt, all types of things to actually bake that thing that's called a relationship. So I loved her. And for me, I thought love was enough. And because I felt that love so strongly, it would made it easier for me to deny my intuition or my spirit or some of the underlying thoughts that really told me it wasn't a good idea. And the thing that really stood out to me is that even though I loved her, I knew deep in my spirit that, for a lack of better words, she would be eternally emotionally unavailable. And that's not because she had to be, but I just knew that that was the path that she was going to choose. She's a Pisces. I understand Pisces. Pisces either going to deal with the issue, or they're going to pretend like it don't exist, right? And the thing about that, she had a good sense of awareness of herself, where she knew that some of the things that she experienced growing up shaped her view, and she may or may not be able to change that perspective. So for the most part, she really wasn't leaving room for a new perspective. And and I really understood why she would be, for a lack of better words, eternally um emotionally unavailable. And it was because her mom really did have a for she just really just had a underlying distrust for men, and specifically black men. And she really gave that to the children. As I mentioned before, I used to feel real bad for a brother, because one of the worst situations for a black male boy to be in is a position where you're being raised by someone who hates who you represent, who you are. So it's going to be very. I used to feel so bad for her brother and trying to create some self identity. One of the congressmen say they work in this field. They work with families and people, and they tell clients all the time, your childhood experiences shape how you show up. Thanks for stopping through, Clay. I love you, girl. Um, show up and how we show childhood experiences shape how we show up in our relationships as adults, right? And if you are being honest with yourself, you can recognize, or if you have the awareness, you'll recognize how it does. Appreciate your family always. Um, it does show up in your life, and then you have that choice to either deal with it or repeat the cycle. So for her, um, her choice was to repeat the cycle. And I knew that, and I struggled with a long time of being able to move on from that because it came with adding a new perspective of love is never really enough. Love is a good ingredient, it's a solid ingredient, but it's really never enough. And then I have to think about the second person, and the second person really stands out because for me, this is the time where I mentioned to you before where I actually did the whole 9 yards, got the ring, did the whole 9 yards and everything on one knee and all this other stuff. So, and the ironic thing about her, when I think about why I wanted to marry this person, it was because of time. And when I'm honest with myself, one of the reasons why it took so long. So I dated that woman for 6 years. And it took one of the reasons why it took so long because there was this underlying uncomfortable spirit that I had. And it was a feeling that although I may be committed to her, I could never really have that woman. And one of the main things that she had to deal with that I see a lot of children deal with is the responsibility of a parent. So for her, and unfortunately, her mom was really her husband. She had to run the household like a husband to in support of her mom. So when it came time for her to be in a position to try to be a wife or date seriously, you always had to, as a man or a person trying to build a relationship, you always gonna have to really share her emotional availability with her husband, who is actually her mom. And then they had this weird dynamic where they just had a weird dynamic where both of her parents were still their parents were still married, although they weren't together, which can create a very weird dynamic for a child to be raised in. And then when she looked out and saw marriage, she really didn't see examples of marriage that she wants. So for her, although she couldn't admit it at that point, when you talked to her, she wanted to be married, as she said. But when faced with that real, real possibility, she had to come to terms with maybe that's not something that she wants because of some of those experiences. And I knew this, you know what I mean? So, two reasons I say that may not be the best reasons to try to marry someone is if the only reason you're marrying that person is because you love them, you better have some more. Now, and that's not the saying for the first person, that's the only reason I wanted to marry her, but that was the main reason. And another reason is that may not be so good is because of time. Um, you really do have to take a look at the whole picture. And when I really think about, especially the last one of the real things that I really didn't want to be attached to is that family dynamic. And that family dynamic has some interesting things. And the best thing, although her immediate family wasn't always as bad, um, it was one of those families where family reunion get-togethers, it might be a fight. It was so weird. My perfect story to explain her family was the time when she told me that her cousin was pregnant by their other cousin. So that's a unique dynamic that I ain't really want to be a part of. I don't judge, but in my family, on my father's side and my mother's side, that's not nothing I know anything about. I can't say that it didn't happen, but we just weren't doing that. So if I was being honest with myself, yeah, right. So if I was being honest with myself, there were several reasons that I didn't want to marry her, and that's why it took so long. You know what I mean? And although I couldn't always voice these opinions, you know what I mean? Because wild as hell, ain't it though? And I really couldn't have voiced these opinions because a lot of times there isn't really a safe place for a man to communicate his feelings honestly because or openly because a lot of times, and I'm not even going to just say a man, it's not always a safe place. Relationships are not always a safe place to communicate your feelings because how the other person may receive it. A lot of times people internalize the things you say as what they aren't. And that may not be what you're saying at all. So that was just one of the places where I really didn't have a space where I felt where I can be 100% with my feelings, right? So now it brings me to the last committed relationship that I was in. And all of those past, looking at those past relationships led up to the understanding that I have for the new relationship. The new relationship is the one that created a new feeling. And that new feeling is the one I had to come to term with, which is for the first time in my life in a relationship, I've I felt like I wasn't good enough, right? And that's why and then I had to deal with this idea of feeling cheated, right? Because for me, out of all the people that, like, all out of the two examples that I gave on people that I wanted to marry, this was a woman that even though she may have had those issues, it was a woman that I was willing to take the risk for, even with those issues on a different level. And even in those past relationships, we may not have gotten married, but one thing that was consistent with those women are they will still tell you I'm a good dude. You know what I mean? They gave me some solid advice. They had to make their decisions based on their own personal reasons in their life, what I can respect. But as far as me being a bad man, or even not even the man for them, because I've had them look me in my face and tell me that, yo, you're the perfect person for me, but they still aren't at a place to be able to say yes to that because again it brings around that idea that I was just mentioning a little bit earlier. A lot of times we ask for things and then when we get that opportunity we are faced with the realization of who we have to be to obtain that position. And then once we realize who we have to be, we have to do a self assessment to see if we actually have those skills to be able to obtain that position. And if we don't, either we work on those skills or we shy away and find ourselves into and slide into familiar or areas of comfort, what we'll talk about a little bit later. Um, Also, this week was a little interesting because I put a post on my Facebook page. Well, it isn't my post per se. I shared a post um, by my Reiki teacher. Actually, it's my Reiki teacher, and she asked a very simple question. And the question was, why are people afraid to love? And as simple as that question was, man, the answers were amazing. And they were amazingly complex at times. And surprisingly, I didn't think that that question would get the level of vulnerability it did on her page because I looked at the comments on her page. It had a certain level of vulnerability, and then on my page as well. And it really gave me a perspective. It gave me the opportunity to kind of take a step back. And a couple of themes looking at that post kind of emerged to me. One of the main themes that I noticed, right, was this idea of this and that, right? A lot of commenters and a lot of people on that post were able to say that they're not afraid of love, but they're afraid of something else. So they were able to say they're not afraid of this love, they're afraid of that. Whether it be time wasted, whether it be picking wrong, whether it be anything, a common theme was where people were very aware of being able to communicate the things they were afraid of outside of love, right? And then the other thing that I noticed by this is that there was some sort of it's a slight disconnect, right? So one of the more amazing things is, let's say 100 people responded. Only if were 100 comments on there, only maybe like 2 people or 3 people actually said they weren't afraid to love. And the theme that wound up being interesting to me is the difficulty that people had with saying I'm afraid to love, right? And the thing about it was so many people were saying they're not afraid of this, they're afraid of that. But because you're afraid of that, because you're afraid of wasting your time, because you're afraid of picking wrong, because you're afraid of any of those things, that naturally means if you're good at math, that you're also afraid of love. And you may not be afraid of love in all its different forms, but there definitely is a specific form of love that creates a certain level of fear in you that you connected to that. You just don't want to be able to say, I'm afraid of love, right? Because of what that may mean. You know what I mean? But the thing that was interesting about that is, as much as we talk about dating, I don't think at times we realize, when we see this all the time, when we all are the P that's in the dating pool. So as much with that level of vulnerability and authenticity that was on my page, I incline people to take a little time, that if you even think about love in terms of I'm not afraid to love, I'm afraid of this, to really come to terms with how that affects or how that doubles back to maybe you're afraid of love, and then come to terms with how that attitude affects the dating pool, period. It affects your dating pool, but by default, because you're in the dating pool, it affects everyone else's. So if you're approaching dating with this idea of I'm not afraid to love, but I'm afraid to pick wrong, you are the P in the pool. So the theme that came through secondly was a lot of people didn't realize they are the P that they don't want in the pool, because they're not aware of some of these thoughts, these dynamics, because they're kind of separating them and compartmentalizing them and not seeing the connection. But here we're gonna make a few connections so we can see that, right? And it's funny because as we think about it, I realize, like we talked about it for the last couple of weeks, we're starting to recognize those gifts that we may have normalized, and it came up again in my men's group. One of the guys was talking about how you know we're appreciative of the men's group, and if more men knew about this, they would want this. And what I think that sometimes we don't realize is the gift of awareness. Awareness is a gift, right? So people may not always be aware of their fears, of their likes, discomforts, or any of the things that may be holding them back. You know what I mean? Um, and I think that that post also shows some people who have the gift of certain, there's levels to the gift of awareness. And I don't think most people, although they definitely were answering the question truthfully and authentically, which I appreciate, I think some of the responses lacked a certain amount of awareness on how that attitude or that aspect or that behavior, because those attitudes comes with behaviors, affect their dating and in turn affect dating for everyone else. Um, then the last thing, man, I got me rambling on today. We ain't even tell no jokes, so I guess I had some stuff to talk about too. Um, the last thing I'm gonna ramble on about a little bit is excuse me. I know I normally have my cup, so y'all need not see me with the water bottle. Normally have my cup, but it's in the dishwasher, so yeah, we're doing the water bottle today. So a conversation came up in the men's group because I talk about them a lot, ironically. And the conversation was this idea of comfort. And a couple of topics came out of this idea of comfort. And one of the main ones is for me, I realize I have to redefine what comfort is and how it fits in my life. Because one thing we had to talk about is how comfort, the idea of comfort, can connect to old habits and old routines that may not necessarily be beneficial to how you're going forward, right? And one of the more difficult ones for me with this idea of comfort was that idea of being able to sit still. I used to always say that I never really wanted to be a workaholic, but somewhere along the line, I found myself as a workaholic. So then, whenever there were lulls or periods of calm in my life, I'd feel like I need to be doing something, or even if I allow myself to relax enough to feel like not feel like I need to be doing something, I'd always have this anxiety of should I have been doing something, right? And so now that I want to move a little differently, I really have to think about comfort and what that means to me, define it for myself. So for myself, I wound up having to break it into two categories as far. First one is external. So external creates its own set of challenges because for me, as we talked about before, most of my external comforts are shaped around needs, not necessarily wants. Even the place I live, it's like, you know what I mean? Food, clothing, shelter. I'll spend money on bow ties and stuff because it's clothing. I'll spend money on food because I like to eat. And I'll spend money on shelter and the things that make those things function better, but not always more comfortable, right? So I had to think about the external comfort and what that looks like for me, and then come to terms with how do I allow myself to reach this external comfort, whatever it may be. And I still don't quite know. I still have to work through what external comfort definition I'm going to have. You know what I mean? Because I like stuff like I got pillows, throws, stuff like that. Games is options to do here, but that's not really those are activities for me per se, and it's not really how I would define comfort. Like if someone was to ask me, how would you define comfort? I wouldn't say a pool table. You know what I mean? Because that's not comfort, right? So I have to think about it externally, but I really do feel like external defining external comfort will be a lot easier once I define what internal comfort actually is. And that's very, 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 very difficult. Because as before, like we talked about, some of my internal comfort was attached to some interesting things, like that ideal fourth quarter baller and the amount of stress that that put on me. But I found comfort in something that would be debilitating to my body, that would break me down over time. So I found comfort in that. So I really, and that's just being honest. Even with this, I really don't know how I'm going to define what internal comfort is going to be for me, because the best way I can describe it now is I just want to be able to coast at a flow, for a lack of better words, if that makes sense. And it isn't even about being able to feel comfort in the eat and in the lull or the lack of stress. So like I'm going through all of that, but when I describe what comfort is, I don't know. So, but I definitely have had two challenges um this week to help me figure out how I'm going to define internal and somewhat external comfort for myself. So the first one is ironic because in the group, one of the questions that was asked to us was, when is the last time, well, asked not to us, to me specifically, that I put myself in a position to be uncomfortable? Because a lot of times people think from uncomfortable is the growth. That's where the growth resides. It pushes you into new avenues, new dimensions, new areas, but the growth resides in being uncomfortable per se, right? And for me, life just puts me in that. And we're in this healing boat right now together because life has put us in there in a space of uncomfort that now we have to redefine a whole bunch of things, right? And it's wild on how we find certain comforts in certain routines. So the first challenge that I've actually had was, um, I'm going to talk about the second one first. So on social media has been on fire, and one thing that I was forced to, I had my perspective challenged. And a lot of times on social media, when you see people's perspective challenge, they will just refute the other perspectives, whether it's based on facts or not. If it doesn't match my experiences, it can't be true, right? So I saw this post, and a lot of these relationship stories are made up for clicks, but this one was a very interesting one. It was something about a girl's boyfriend. His brother died, and the dude wound up buying his deceased brother's girlfriend and his own girlfriend the same gift, right? And she was upset, and I thought immediately, I've I've done that before. I swear to God, that first girl that I told you about that I wanted to marry, I bought her and my mother Pandora bracelets, right? And at no point in time, neither one of them were offended because, of course, the bracelet with Pandora, the bracelet can be the same. Everybody got the same Pandora. The bees is what make it different. So neither one was offended or anything like that. And I had such the best intentions. I never even thought how it might or how it could be offensive. And I just went along with it. So when I read that post, I noticed how a lot of people were disagreeing with the girlfriend about her being upset. And although it would be easy for me to disagree, because there's comfort in the familiarity in what I know. I've done that before, and no one else has ever been upset. So she shouldn't be upset either, right? Instead of finding comfort, I push myself. I allow myself to be uncomfortable and accept that as a perspective. And going forward, I will consider that. So the next woman that I date, I probably won't buy her and my mama the same gift because I never thought about that. I was just moving on intentions, and we talked about it before. Good intentions, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and intentions don't really matter. Outcomes do. You can have the best intentions, But if you're creating terrible outcomes, who cares about your intentions? Who cares? Who cares? Who cares? Who cares? Right. So I saw that, and that was interesting because for me, that was something I had done in my life. Never thought was wrong. Never would have considered was wrong until I saw an opposing perspective that pushed me out of this space of comfort. And then I had to redefine what an idea of a comfortable space for me in buying gifts in relationships, right? So, but the biggest challenge that I've probably been having this week has been my birthday. So I know we've talked about it, and it's interesting because I had to do a little thinking. And the funny thing about it is, we already talked about it. One of the more difficult things for me to be able to do is to plan something for myself that's based on solely on a want and not where I could tie this want into a need. So now my birthday's coming up and I need to plan something, and I don't know how to do that. My comfort routine is not to plan, just kind of free flow. And at some point, something pops up and choose to do something. And it's been so much anxiety around this idea of planning something for my birthday. So then I had to dig a little deeper. And why is there so much anxiety around planning for my birthday? One, is the connection between spending on myself and my wants. That's difficult too. And then two, the second thing is what I realize is, which ties in somewhat to that idea of cheating. Like if I plan something for my birthday, for the most part, what's gonna wind up happening is if I want people to attend, I'll have to pay for everybody to attend. And that's a wild concept. And it's difficult for me because I want to do something for the first year for real, because we talking about this doing something that you want for yourself. I just want to do something that I want for me. And I don't want to have to worry or think about anybody else or, want to be perfect, which was something I also thought about. Somebody do something for me. And it's interesting because I've had girlfriends and stuff like this. And no lie, I think the last time that I've had someone a girlfriend, even a girl that I dated, do something for me on my birthday was the girl I dated in Milwaukee, that girl I wanted to date. And that was, ooh, I guess I already told I'm how old I am, but that was like 2011, 2012. Now, that's not to say I haven't had women do stuff for me, right? So I run into these. My birthday, I realized just at an interesting time. People done spent all their money for Christmas, and the little bit that they got back, they spent on Valentine's Day. And here I come trotting through the week after Valentine's Day. So I've had people do plenty of things for my birthday per se, but just never on my birthday. No one ever taken the time to actually plan something for my birthday or even be like, yo, I'll pay for your food. So I'm at this place where now I just want to do it for myself. And that's what brought me to the perspective of, dang, I don't want to do it by myself. It's my birthday. I want to be able to enjoy it with someone else. And then, but I really, really don't want the responsibility of having to take care of everyone on my birthday. You know what I mean? Because we're moving out of that space where I am the caretaker. I come through and I took my cape off. And at least for the first year in a long time, I'm just going to do something that I want to do for myself and just me only. And it was a difficult week even come to terms with that because even as of yesterday, I was still thinking of how one of the reasons I couldn't plan is because I'm trying to figure out how I can take someone else. I can't make reservations because I'm based on them. And then I thought about it like, yo, I'm begging to pay for somebody else on my birthday. That's crazy. I'm not doing that. So now I really just got to the point where there are challenges in deciding what an idea of comfort is for me and redefining comfort. One of the new definitions for comfort for me is doing what I want to do for me. And it's okay. And I'm going to have to work with that because, we've talked about it. And one of my difficulties is that guilt feeling for drawing boundaries. And we've already talked about how I come to terms with or come to the conclusion or the root issues of why I would feel guilty for drawing boundaries. So I'm still working through some of that. So it'll still be a little bit of guilt, but I really don't care because like I said, I'm redefining what comfort means for me. And one of the things that I do want to have in my new definition of comfort is doing things for me and not worrying about anybody else. And if on no other day of the year that I can take this challenge and try it and see if I can stand up to it, it would be my birthday. All right. So, ultimately, like I said, I ain't gonna keep y'all all night tonight. I appreciate y'all holding on for me. Uh, I'm about to start celebrating my 45th birthday. Hey, Hope, I don't know if Hope you still on there, but Hope, you be tripping me out when you be using your stalker profile. Ooh, excuse me, that was so rude. I hope y'all in the ASMR, but I'm gonna go in that water now. So cut me a little slack. All right, I want to get my notes again so I can review some of the topics we talked about, something that you think about. Um, really had to get to the source of my anger and frustrations, which was ideas of feeling cheated, and the one we didn't really go deeper into. It was my first time ever feeling like I wasn't good enough, and I talked about how most of my previous relationships, even in the breakup, they expressed I was good enough. But this last one, man, Jesus Christ, nothing I did was good enough. Even pay all the bill, like nothing was good enough. And it was the first time that I ever felt like I wasn't good enough. Um, so then we talked about this idea of afraid to love and having the awareness and drawing the connections between this and that. Although you may not be afraid to love, you're afraid of something else. And just because you're afraid of something else, mathematically, it ties right back into love. It's a circle, a complete cipher. So it ties back into your fears of love. So get to the root of that and figure out how that affects your dating life, those fears, how it affects your dating pool and the choices of who you date, and how in turn that is the P, how you may be adding to the P that is in the dating pool with your ideas and thoughts of dating. And then the last thing was to redefine some of the words and things that we've lived by in our life and some of the behaviors, and making sure we're looking at the routine. So the word that we were looking to redefine is comfort, and making sure that we aren't finding comfort in routines that are no longer serving our purpose or the direction that we're heading in. And we're redefining these words internally and externally as we do that. And one more thing before I go, I do want to definitely say, as I was talking about that fear of love, I do want to bring up a fear dynamic of love that does happen, and it's one that I spoke on with the 6 year relationship I had. It's the one where a lot of people want some things, right? And then when you get those things, you are faced with who you got to be. to achieve those things. And then you got to come to terms with if you can be that person. And I know I said that before, but I really do want to reiterate because as you're thinking about the things that you want and who you want to be in your life, you also have to think about the skill sets that it takes to have those things. And while you're working on you, work on those skill sets, cultivate those skill sets. So when these opportunities come, you want to make sure you have it and that fear won't override your preparation. Okay. So I appreciate you. I will see you Thursday for book club Thursday. And oh my God. So next week, I don't know what next week's gonna be. Next week I will be in Virginia. So I think I bought that light, so it might be the opportunity where we try this thing on the road. We'll see how it goes. If it's a mess, we'll figure it out together. So I thank you for your patience. I thank you for your viewing. Think about those things. Redefine yourself. Redefine your love. Redefine your fear. Acknowledge your gifts, especially that gift of awareness, and keep getting that food for your soul. I will see you all next week, and thanks again.